And welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. Joining me on the line tonight is my good friend, Julien DeMarco. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining me again tonight. Listen, we're a little late on this story. Of course, the historic Roe v. Wade decision that came out with the Supreme Court last week. I was out of town. Julian and I and Neil over at Knights of Christendom, we did a little kind of a Facebook cast while I was staying at family's house out there in Vegas. And so we kind of wanted to get an official show on the books here for the Roe v. Wade decision because it's historic. And so, Julian, I came into the pro-life movement back in the early 90s. So call it about 30 years now. That's where my sort of political curiosity began and where kind of my more right of center political leanings started. It started with that one issue, Roe v. Wade, because I saw it as a great injustice, a great inhumanity, and a great Holocaust. And honestly, I never thought I'd live to see today, particularly as I've gotten much more skeptical of politics in America, much more skeptical of democracy. Again, I never thought I would live to see the day where Roe v. Wade will be overturned. And listen, I know there's many Catholics and other people out there skeptical out there about this decision and how did it come about, and it came out of nowhere, and it's a giant rope-a-dope is what they're arguing. I get that argument, right? There's some new world order puppets controlling the strings, and they're gonna pull out the rug underneath us from any second now, Julian. But you know what? I don't know about all that. I think sometimes God's divine hand, it works, and in this case, listen, I'm gonna choose to celebrate it. Because at the end of the day, if you're asking me, do I believe or did I want Roe v. Wade to be overturned or stayed, I would have told you I want Roe v. Wade to be overturned. We got what we've been fighting for. It's not a complete victory yet, but it's a one fantastic start. And honestly, Julian, you know me, and you like me, we've been very down on America, very skeptical on America for a long time. But I got to tell you, with so little to be proud of as Americans over the past generation or so, America did something good in my lifetime. For the first time in my life, a great evil injustice was overturned. And for the first time in a very long time, Julian, at least for now, for this moment in history, this moment in time, I could say I'm a proud American, Julian. What are your thoughts, my friend?
I wouldn't say that I'm a proud American. I wouldn't go that far. But well, you can be a proud American. That's great. But for me, I would just say I'm happy and I'm proud. But proud to be an American, at least where I know I'm free. Yeah, I think I'm. That's a little. We'll take it down a notch for that for me.
Okay, but you are proud of the moment at the very least, what America did here, right?
Yes, I'm proud for what America did. Let's make that crystal clear.
Yes.
For me, the pro-life movement has been something that has only manifested for me for the last 3-4 years since I've been Catholic. Now, when I wasn't Catholic. So my position on pro-life and on abortion has been the same since I was a teenager, when I wasn't Catholic, and till now. It has always remained consistent. It's only within the last 3-4 years that I've been vocal about abortion being wrong. When I wasn't Catholic, I always thought that abortion was wrong, which I guess I am living proof that you don't have to be Catholic or religious to know that abortion is wrong.
Right.
Which throughout my faith journey, I've been many things, but I've never been atheist, but I've never been really practicing in all of my faith journeys. But I've always remained consistent when it comes to abortion, that I thought that it was wrong and there was not a reason for it unless there was some really grave issue. And the whole argument, safe legal and rare was just talking points. It was claptrap.
It was a damnable lie is what it was. It was
Exactly.
just the slippery slope to get us to killing babies at 9 months. Let's be honest here. And so,
Yes, that's exactly right.
yeah. So listen, I over the last few years, with my frustration with the American political system and democracy in general, I've become kind of critical of the pro-life movement. And so in that respect, I don't know what happened with this decision. I don't know who was behind the scenes. I've been, like you, a consistent voice for the pro-life movement, supported it at every level. And in that respect, if I owe the pro-life movement an apology, if they had a bigger role in this than what I didn't realize, then I'll apologize. But my frustrations with the democratic process and American politics has boiled over precisely because we had two presidents that had the House and the Senate, and they did absolutely nothing on abortion. I don't want to hear about the Mexico policy, okay, and all that crap, right? That's more of a monetary policy than everything else, a symbolic gesture, right? We know what the pro-life movement was on the political right. It was to get people of a Christian nature to get out and vote. Now,
well, speaking of voting, I said this when the decision came down and we were all in a celebratory mood. I said this online. I said this in person. I said this to you. I said this on our Facebook podcast. What is the right going to run on now? And then, well, generally the answer that I've gotten from everybody is, we still have a battle in the states. Yes, that is true. Okay, for people who don't know this, the lies that you're hearing on The View and people like Morning Joe and whatever, MSNBC. I don't watch it. I can't even pronounce the name of the channel.
Yeah.
And CNN, the Clinton News Network or the Communist News Network, whichever one you prefer. Overturning Roe versus Wade did not make abortion illegal. It just took it back to the states. We are right back in the 1970s when it comes to abortion before Roe versus Wade. So abortion is not illegal throughout the country. There is not a federal ban banning abortion in all 50 states. It just means individual states can ban abortion, like the 10 states or 13 states. I don't know where it's at right now, but I know at the time of this recording, it is 10 states that have outlawed abortion entirely, which they would not have been able to do if Roe versus Wade was still in effect. So abortion is quite legal in California and New York. So for all those out there that have their friends and people at the Clinton News Network are saying abortion is banned, that is an outright lie, and they need to shut up. But but the Republicans, though, what are they going to run on a national platform? They can run on pro-life issues on a state-by-state basis, but what are they really going to do on a national level?
Well, that's a great question, because I think, and I'm a little confused here because I was listening to our colleague Timothy Gordon over at Rules for Retrograde, who's a what's he call himself, a subsidiarity integralist, he says.
I guess I don't really listen to him that much.
Fair enough, but he came out and argued that apparently now it's okay for, I guess, conservatives to argue for a life amendment at the federal level, because that, for some reason, I don't know, I haven't figured out yet, would not be a violation of subsidiarity. So hence, you asked the question, what are conservatives going to run on? How about a life amendment, Julian?
Well, a life amendment. That is okay. When was the last amendment in this country?
27th, I believe, amendment is what it was, I believe.
1927?
Well, hold on here. I don't remember. Let me look it up while you figure that one out.
That from what I do know, to make an amendment in this country, it's pretty hard. I don't think you're going to. That's another miracle in and of itself, to get a life amendment into the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah, 1992 was the last amendment.
1992. So
yeah.
it was in my lifetime, 2
Yeah.
years after I was born.
Yeah. So
but what was it about, though?
Let's see here. 27th Amendment to the United States. Constitution prohibits any law that increases or decreases the salary of members of Congress for taking effect.
Well. Okay, so
Yeah.
that amendment is quite easy to get passed, because it was dealing with the people that it doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect me. I don't think you're going to be running for political office anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be running for political office anytime soon. But if stranger things have happened in this world, if either one of us run for office, that amendment will certainly be good for us.
That's
but
right.
It has nothing to do with the grand scheme of things. So I go back to my original statement. It will take a miracle to get a life amendment.
Yeah, but it was supposed to take a miracle to overturn Roe v. Wade that did not stop the political right from using it to get Christians to the polls, right? That's the point here.
Yes, but I mean, if I remember correctly from civics class, you have to have almost everybody on board to get an amendment.
Yeah, 2/3 of states, I believe, is what it was. I'm trying to remember now, something like that. And so it's a tough task, without a doubt. And so, but listen, I'm just speculating here as to, answering your question about what will the right run on. I think there's a chance to run on that. So, but Julian, let's tackle some of this bad leftist logic, okay? Because it's been floating around in memes and the internet and everything like that. And you're right when you talk about things like The View and Whoopi Goldberg. It's so embarrassing to watch. And to me, something like The View is a complete indictment on democracy, because they're there for a reason. That is to manipulate, quite frankly, the dumbest minds in our society, right? Because at the end of the day, democracy has always been a game of propaganda. Who can win the propaganda war so they can win the popularity contest at the polls? But we'll save that for another time. But one of the arguments I'm hearing right now, of course, is, well, look at all these babies being born. Are you Christians going to start adopting some of these children, Julian? Are you going to adopt? How many are you going to adopt, Julian? 3, 4, 5? What are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't mind adopting and being a single dad. Like, I would not, I think it would be wrong. I think it's wrong to force a child into a single family home. But I also think it is wrong to have a child be languishing in the system, in the foster care system, or in a modern day orphanage, which I think is probably much more heinous today than something in the past. I mean, they're just a nameless child just going through the system. So I mean, if I had the space, which I don't, then yes, I would adopt. I would adopt. So yeah, to answer that question, I would.
Yeah.
Or I would foster.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, here's how I would deal with this. The first of all is, just because people are born into poverty doesn't mean they deserve the death penalty. That's the bottom line. Is there lots of gray areas in regards to a lot of births that are children born in not in ideal circumstances or flat out difficult circumstances? Oh, absolutely. We have a completely broken culture in America. But again, I believe abortion, like contraception, the broken family, the single mom homes, the disordered life, it's a byproduct of a culture that's collapsed Abortion is a byproduct of that. The first of which, what I would say is, well, it shouldn't be up to Christians or anybody that's pro-life because they want to save the baby's life. Saving the baby's life is a fundamental human right based upon the dictates of natural law. Second of all, people that have babies should take care of their own babies to begin with. That should be the standard. Okay.
Can I just say something though?
Right.
We talk about natural law. Timothy Gordon talks about natural law. I don't think most people know what natural law is. So when we talk about because when we talk about natural law and we talk about abortion, most people don't understand that when you engage in coitus,
yes,
for people who don't know what that word means, it means intimate relations.
Yeah, sex.
That you have a high chance, especially if the woman involved is menstruating, ovulating, that you will get pregnant. Yeah. So people don't seem to understand even just basic biology, that these things naturally happen, because we live in a world where we're told that that sex is malleable, gender is malleable, a woman can become a man and a man can become a woman, and that a woman's body can be controlled in the sense that if you don't want to get pregnant, here's a condom or here's a pill. And you can basically climb all the heights you want that a man can do, when in reality you can't, because you're stopping your body from doing something that's natural. You menstruate, you get pregnant most of the time when you have relations. That is something that your body naturally does, and you are stopping that from happening by either having contraception or by having pills.
That's right.
And so you're trying to stop something that is natural, and so you have no understanding of nature, of what naturally goes on in nature. So why would you have any understanding of natural law when it comes to killing a baby?
Well, and I think that's my point here, right? We got these colloquial talking points by the left, desperately trying to come up with some cohesive argument. And they're saying, well, it's time for all you Christians to pony up and start adopting children. Well, that's not the question at hand. The question at hand is that people need to take more responsibility over their actions. If you get pregnant because you engage in coitus, as you said, there needs to be a response. There may need to be a responsible result, a responsibility that you take up. Okay, that's just the basic bottom line, sort of, basic moral standards that we understand. The fact that you engage in a form of sex that brings a child into the world where you claim you're not ready, you engage in an irresponsible act by creating a life. That's what you've done. And now now the argument is we throw it on somebody else to pick up the responsibility for the irresponsibility of the act itself. This is a byproduct of the broken culture. It is a byproduct of an apostatized culture. What Christians are saying and what pro-life people are saying, wait a minute, it isn't perfect, but you don't kill the baby to rectify a great moral disorder in society, particularly a moral disorder for women who got pregnant in not the most ideal situations, and that is outside of marriage, Julian. That's the problem here. That's why it's a bad argument.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of these bad arguments and Whoopi Goldberg, you have her on The View saying women are going to die. Where are these women dying at? Please show me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's more women die from botched abortions then they're dying from having their babies.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe Sister Mary Clarence needs to go back to leading some, some choir musicals for the Pope or something there. I mean, I guess that's what makes her an authority, right?
Well, what makes her an authority is that she is a woman, a Black woman, and she's an actress, and she's a New York, Hollywood elite. She has her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She's on a daytime talk show with a bunch of other screaming other harpies, yakking and talking about stuff that she has no business yakking and talking about. That's what makes her an expert.
Yeah, it does. But, listen, man, I mean, me and my wife like to joke, when in regards to Sister Act 1 and 2. I mean, she's part of the Novus Ordo Church there, isn't she? I mean, you expect this kind of illogic.
Now I love Sister Act. Probably because of nostalgia. It's also like it's a real 90s movie.
Yes.
I definitely like the blend of gospel and traditional Catholic hymns. That is a very good mix.
Yeah.
I know that some traditionalists don't like that. That's okay. I thought it was a good mix, but then again, I also have a much more, how could I put it, eclectic view of things. So
there you go.
But being in Sister Act and and having a good movie and with all the 90s nostalgia feels does not make you an expert to talk about killing a baby and thinking that's okay.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Bad arguments all the way across to justify the murder of children by the left is disgusting, grotesque, and all that stuff. Now, let's flip the coin to the other side and talk about the political right. Because there is some problems in regards to, again, there are going to be kids born in very difficult circumstances because, again, we have a broken culture, right? We're living through the great apostasy. We're living through the great breakdown of faith, and it's led to a culture that's rotten to the core, Julie, at this point. And so Hungary and Poland have kind of figured it out. They had dying population rates. They put some pro-family friendly policies in place, and we're starting to see a tick up in, again, reproduction rates, fertility rates in those countries. In the meantime, in America, we have now dropped below replacement level. Italy, Spain, Japan, we're not replacing ourselves in these countries in that regard with birth rates, which is going to bring demographic problems. It's why we're shipping over, why we're accepting all these immigrants, because we're going to need workers. There's problems here. But here we go again from the political right. This libertarian aspect is you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No government programs here. Parents got to take care of their own kids. But the fact is, Julian, life in America is becoming just as hard as it's been in Europe for decades now, where the cost of living is high, the wages are low, there's a greater and greater disparity of wealth. You can't even buy a home anymore if you've got a relatively large family at a reasonable price. It's tying people down to perpetual debt for a lifetime. I mean, we're bringing these babies into the world. What can the right propose to help these children out, Julian?
Well, I think that I think that men and women should get equal leave. That if a woman gets 6 months for maternity leave and a man only gets 2, I think that a woman should have 6 months and a man should have 6 months. Yeah, just because she brought the baby into the world, the man still he still needs to be there for his wife, for the woman that gave him his child. He also he needs to bond with his child.
Okay, hold on. Stop right there. Okay, because what the political right is going to tell you, the libertarian side. Wait a minute now, Julian. You got the mother home. We're already paying her to stay. You want us to pay the father now? Now you're interfering with the economic engine of prosperity in America. You know, jobs aren't there to provide for families. Jobs or businesses isn't there. They're there to make profits. You're asking businesses now to take a bigger cut in profit, Julien. How dare you? How dare
Well, I
you?
mean, we all have to work. A CEO has to work. The lowest person on the rung has to work. We're all working to provide, unless you're independently wealthy. Even if you're independently wealthy, somebody else is working for your wealth to keep on accumulating, even if you aren't personally doing anything to generate wealth other than you keep getting more money. So somebody has to work to make all of this spin.
Right.
And we all have to provide for ourselves and for our family.
Hold on, Julie. But what you're saying is you want the mother and the father home. You want them to collect a check from this business for doing nothing, for not providing work, Julien. That's what you're saying here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, because you cannot say that we're pro-life and that we need that. So now what the left is saying, okay, this person is now forced to have this child when they don't want it, and which adoption is always there. You know, everybody forgets adoption. If you don't want it, have the baby, give it up for adoption. But if we're just going to live in this world where adoption is not an option when it is, okay, well, then you need to be able to, one, take time to recover from having this child, two, bond with that child, and three, you need to be able to, while you're bonding with this child, still be able to have, you know, income coming in. Now, I mean, if you're at a company where you're a large company and you have the resources, you can take that person who's on paternity leave, you can bring in a temp. That's why they're temp agencies. They exist for a reason.
But now you're paying two people to do the same job. Now you're paying two people.
You pay the temp less money than you actually pay the person who actually holds down the job. Okay. You don't pay the temp the same amount of money as the person who has the actual job. But this is what we need to create a culture that induces and respects families.
I agree.
You cannot if wages need to go up, regardless whether or not you have one child or zero child or have 12 children. Wages all across the board for everybody needs to go up, number one. Number two, we need to have a culture where if you get pregnant, that you can call it maternity leave, you can call it paternity leave, or you can call it family leave, which some places do call it family leave, where you get where you are on leave for a certain amount of time and then you come back. Now,
okay.
Nobody's saying that you're just like checking out for like, I think some places the maternity leave was like 12 weeks, which I think is short. Now, 6 months may be extreme, but but 12 months, you should at least have 3 months.
Yeah.
I think the mother and father should at least have 3 months.
Yeah. Well,
minimum.
I got you, and I hear you there. And I think though that's a great stopgap kind of a policy, a great compromise in many respects. I think the problem that political right faces is that their whole economic model is a sham at this point in history. It's a usury debt system that they have endorsed for a long time. The money manipulation and things of that nature, where the American usury system now has forced two household members to go to work and nobody's home to raise families, never mind just the children per se that are born there. And housing is out of control. We got inflation that's kicking in now because of government manipulation money. There's a whole host of other problems that made it impossible for, I guess, families to really raise families. It's very difficult. That's my point now. I mean, it's like I said so many times, you know, especially in the Catholic community and in places like the Mormon community that also believe in having a lot of children. I mean, you come out to my way in Utah where I'm at, and let's say you got 5, 6 kids, you need that 5-bedroom house. It's going to cost you $750,000.
Yeah, but the thing is though, with the well, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, I was just having a conversation earlier today where it's just like, you know, when we were talking about relationships and marriage and stuff like that. And they were talking about, like, you know, people who talk about, like, oh, we can't afford to have another kid. You know, it's not just you. It's you and God. God will provide. Yes, that is true. But you also need to be responsible. Just popping out kids irresponsibly, even if you're married, is just like being single, popping out kids irresponsibly. It's the same thing, except one you're married and one you're not. Both are irresponsible. And I do believe that God is obviously, he will provide, but there is also some reality here. If you can't afford another kid and you have that kid and you're still making the same salary and you can't, then clearly you need to do something else. And that, you know, I sometimes think that people think that God is just going to, like, drop extra money out of the sky or something.
My point, Julian, is this.
Oh, I just want to make the point about also the Mormons too. The thing about the Mormons is, and I think you've talked about this before, is that they are very good at community and taking care of each other. So when you have that family, the Mormons have their own welfare state. They have money, they have all these handouts and all these things to help other Mormons. Catholics, you'll be lucky if you go to your parish church and you're just like, I can't afford to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And it's just like they give them a one-time thing, and it's just like, that's it. I mean, I know. So there is a different community aspect when it comes to the Mormons and Catholics.
Agreed. But the Mormons also have a tax system in place that helps facilitate that kind of community outreach. And so, you know, we Catholics, we've never been ordered in that respect to give 10% pre-tax money to the church either. It's a voluntary offering is what we do. So there's some differences there, Julian, that we have to acknowledge. I think my point that I'm making here is that, you know, oftentimes we Catholics, we get down in this social war, right? This culture war that we're always talking about, right? With the sodomy and the pornography and the contraception and the abortion. My point is this. The left has attacked using social policies primarily over the past 50, 60, 70 years in the midst of the sexual revolution. However, economics has been used as a method of warfare as well too against the family. As we continue to see, again, life become much more expensive through, again, what we would call, I mean, they call it free markets. I don't know what this is anymore.
We have a hybrid system.
Yeah, we do. Exactly.
We are in the late stages of capitalism. What we have is a hybrid system.
Great.
I think, and it's not just.
Hold on. You agree that the economics has been used as a weapon by the right?
I think economics has been used as a weapon by the right, but it also has been a weapon by the left as well. Everybody's using it as a weapon.
Agreed. But I just think the right doesn't realize that. The right is in this utopian idea of free markets and the invisible hand and all this stuff we've heard about, you know, economic prosperity, economic engine of prosperity.
If the right honestly, truly believed in free markets and all these things, then we would not be subsidizing College Inc. We would not be giving out, the government would not be giving out massive loans. One of the reasons why college is so expensive is because colleges know that the government will give your 18-year-old the majority of the money that they need to go to that college. So let's say, for example, one of the colleges you're going to cost $80,000 a year. You go to the government, they give you more than half of that money. You just need to get private loans. And so you get the private loans, it covers the rest. If the government did not give you that money, that college would not be able to charge $80,000 a year.
I agree. They've manipulated the student loan system, and that's just one example that we've seen. I mean, now the idea that we got institutions, these big corporations buying out housing, putting the pressure on families to spend more of their hard-earned money on housing costs just to put a roof over your head, pushing mom and dad out of the house, leaving the kids at home for MTV and cable and Whoopi Goldberg and the porn industry to raise your kids. And then you wonder why we have all these social dysfunction in society when parents aren't home. People are being pushed to an extreme just to put a roof over your head, right? And so this is what I'm saying. It's been an attack on two fronts, from the left and the right. And when the right continues to argue for these laissez-faire kind of economic utopian principles, okay, what happens when mom and dad are pushed out of the house because we've had the money manipulator? What is the answer there? We've pushed people off the land, and I know historically not everybody owned land, but there was access to land at one time for everybody in one capacity or another. Wasn't a perfect world, but now we're in this usury system. Our homes are nothing but a basic standard place to rest our heads at night so we can wake up the next morning to go back into the usury system, this service sector economy that doesn't allow people to elevate themselves out of the system itself. Most people live and die in a perpetual state of debt, Julian, in the system. And then we wonder why many people are only choosing to have one, maybe two children. Listen, I'm Italian. Go to Italy. They're not having children over there. Yes, the apostasy, the culture war has been a big problem in Italy. But the other problem has been the economy has been crap since the end of World War II. People are not having children in Italy and Spain and Japan because the economic system won't allow them to have more, even if they want to.
It's impossible to. The thing is, though, en masse, it is impossible from an economic standpoint for every. Like, I know so many Catholic families that have like 8 kids, 12 kids, 14 kids. That's great. And from the onset, they seem to be getting by. And some of them have like decent. I'm sure some of them have they have decent jobs, and I don't think they're necessarily living paycheck to paycheck, but they're probably living below their means. At the same time, it's not like. But then again, they also have the mindset and the personality not to want to do anything else. So which is fine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you cannot expect an entire population to have 8, 12 kids because we don't live in a world where everybody can do that.
Where do you put these kids? Where do you house them?
It's not, yes, where will you house them? It's not economically possible.
That's my issue here. You have 8, 10 kids, you're going to need a big house, you're going to need land. It's unaffordable at this point in history for most average families. That's it. Listen, I got in a debate with a super duper trad a couple years back, right? Saying, listen, these housing prices are absolutely out of control. You know, I believe we all should have an inherent right to partake of the land in some capacity, right? I'm not saying land should be redistributed, but the market value has been distorted because of money manipulation and corporations and things like that. And the super duper trad told me, well, you're just being envious. Go out and rent. Well, wait a minute. First of all, I don't want to rent. I want to own my land. We have private property rights, but it's unaffordable. See, here's my thing. Julian, and maybe I'm off. You answer this, okay? I know the old world wasn't perfect, but what is the difference between the old world, where maybe the land was consolidated by the monarch or even the nobles or the higher classes, and kept it from the peasant class, versus today, where we say, okay, anybody could buy land, but we're going to make it so expensive, you're going to work your entire life to pay it off. Effectively, it's the same thing as those unjust worlds of the old world.
I don't think there's really much of a difference, other than the fact that we've told everybody that everybody. So we live in a time period now where everybody's under the mindset that they have the right to buy land, that they have that they have private property, and all of these things. There, as I said, there's no real difference between now and in the past, except in the past there wasn't this mindset that everybody had to own land, and if you didn't own land, you're some type of a failure, because there wasn't land like there is now, where you have these lots of little lots, all basically divvied up, and then you have these big huge houses on them that really aren't anything special. When you, like Ryan homes, for example, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ryan homes, but they're basically like cookie cutter homes. But you have this lot, and then that's it. You squeeze all of these houses together, all these lots together, and then it's just like, this is going to cost $200,000 for what? For a cookie cutter house that's literally the same as the house that's literally right next to it.
That has no functionality. It has no function to it at all. You can't grow food on it. You can't have livestock. It's nothing. It's just a place to dwell your head on. That's all it is. There's no function.
So there's no real, in my mind, in my opinion, there's no real difference between now and in the past, except now except now the difference is, for now than in the past, is that you're an adult, or you've made it, or whatever the case may be, is if you buy a house, because it's all pushed to buying a house, and there's a whole entire market. There's an economy based off of owning a house.
That's right.
In the past, the economy of the kingdom, there was no housing sector. They didn't look at housing prices and all these types of things, because housing prices, it wasn't constantly being manipulated every single year.
It was static. I know.
It was static because half the population couldn't own. It's not like they couldn't own property. They could own property. They just couldn't afford to buy property, because that wasn't the goal. That wasn't the mindset, the lifestyle, the ethos of the people then.
But wasn't there access to land for the peasants? How did the peasants survive in the old world?
Well, if you lived outside of the city, if you didn't live in a city, or even if you did live in some cities, there was land. But if you lived out in a village somewhere, you typically, you had a farm. You might have a farm. You might lease that farm. You don't own the farm. Right. You lease it, like you do now. You lease it and you work the farm. You have the animals and whatever, and you provide for yourself, but you don't own the land. The local lord or some rich person owns that land, and you lease it from them, and then you live in the house and you work the land. Depending on the lease, you could be a tenant farmer, where obviously you farm for yourself, for your own survival, and then you farm for the manor, for the rich person who uses that the produce that you make, or whatever you're farming on the farm,
Yeah.
for the village or for that area of the country. So it's sort of, in an agricultural time, it's more of the fact that we lived in tuned with the land, and less today where we're.
It's mine, right?
What did you say?
Well, it's like it's less, it's like you said, we were more in tune with the land rather than it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's an asset, it's money, 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 money. It's
yes, exactly. There's a different mindset.
Yes. Like the land was a gift from God, so we had the ability to raise our families. I mean, look at the situation we're in now with all this inflation kicking in. I got people contacting me, Julian, telling me, I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids. And that's the irony of it. Oh, look at these homes we've been put into, right? One of the things that's happening in my town is condominiums everywhere in the name of affordable housing. In the meantime, we put more and more people into these dwellings where there's no functionality to them other than a place to rest at night and watch TV when you're not partaking of the usury system.
Exactly. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Condominiums are a glorified apartment.
That's all there. But my point, Julian, is this. In a time of great inflation, where people are worried about feeding their children, they don't even have the land anymore to grow their own food as an option, Julian. That's the irony of it all, which makes us even greater slaves, even more dependent on the system, the money system itself. The political right likes to talk about freedom, liberty, economic engine of prosperity, the greatest economy in the history of the world. And yet people are more enslaved financially than ever before.
Exactly. As I said before, when in the past we were more in tune with nature, even when you were living in the city, you would still see farm animals running around.
Sure.
Because the countryside was farming land, but you'd also have farms that were close to the city as well. All of our food, majority of our food, is shipped from so far away that most people don't know how to grow. They don't know how to even garden within their own house.
That's right.
There are so many books. If you walk into a bookstore, and if you go to the gardening section, there are so many books on even if you live in like an apartment, you can literally you can grow tomatoes, you can grow carrots, you can grow all these things, and it's hanging farming or urban farming, and it's essentially, what it is recapturing what was essentially something that the old world did. Urban farming is not a new development. It's really a rediscovery of something that was done in the past.
Yeah, because I think people are tired of modernity in a lot of different ways. And I think one of the other issues too is not just so much as growing your own food and being able to feed yourself and have some level of self-sufficiency. But Julian, do we really know what's being put into our foods, Julian? Do you have any idea when we go to the store? I don't.
Probably not. I mean, like the Food and Drug Administration it's another bureaucracy that I wouldn't trust, just like I wouldn't trust anything else in the government.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess to round it back to the abortion thing, listen, I cheer my friends on the right for joining Catholics on ending this atrocious, Roe v. Wade law. Well, we had over 60 million children killed in America alone. It was a Holocaust of biblical proportions, whatever you want to call it, I guess, at this point. I'm glad it's over, but we have to realize that as Americans, the family is being pushed harder and harder and harder. For the right that's always sided with corporations in the name of freedom, liberty, and profits, that model needs to end, especially after the 2020 aftermath, after the right got screwed in the rear end by the corporations. Now they're kind of having a wake-up call, kind of. They're still not being honest with themselves about what it is. They're throwing that word fascism around every 5 minutes. But really, as I think, Julian, as the philosophers of the past have talked about, the integralists, the monarchist philosophers, said, listen, what is the great weakness of democracy? It gives rise to the oligarchies. And that's what we're living through, right?
Yeah, I mean, these oligarchs, especially in this country, are escalating everything while at the same time trying to say, no, we're not, when they actually are, with everything on the international stage, from inflation to all these economic sanctions. Europe is sanctioning itself into suicide.
Yes.
America is trying. You have a whole block of countries now, basically coming up with all these technologies and banking systems, so it's not beholden to America's banks, because America is trying to use its banking system to push Russia out of the world market. And these other countries don't like that. America is escalating all of these things while at the same time whining that it's not.
Yeah.
And last year, we left Afghanistan with our tail between our legs, left $80 million there worth of weapons.
Yeah.
Now we're writing blank checks when people are paying $7, $8 of gas to Ukraine to keep funding this war that is pointless. And they don't care about the loss of life in Ukraine or in Russia. They just want to keep pushing this narrative while writing a blank check for, I'm sorry, but Ukraine is not a major issue, okay? Let the East worry about this, okay? Now NATO is Putin was very, very clear. NATO is not supposed to expand on its western border.
Yep.
Okay, and now it's adding Finland and the Kingdom of Sweden. Now it is golfing all of Russia's western border. Wow, and all of this is being egged on by the United States, while the United States is crying foul and saying that Russia is the aggressor here. Who is being the aggressor here? The United States is telling China what to do, Russia what to do, while at the same time, these countries are like, hey, stay out of my business, stay out of this area, and stop trying to ruin my country and my economy. And the United States is like, no, we're just going to ruin your economy. And it's just like, and then you wonder why things are going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, I know. Listen, foreign policy is always tricky because I don't know if we're ever really told the truth. But even talking to my classical liberal friends, Julian, there's kind of a red alert going off in the back of their minds about what's going on in that region of the world, particularly as, oh boy, I don't know how deep I want to go into this because it seems to me that America is getting itself in a lot of trouble that it shouldn't be in. I'm going to leave it at that right there. And from this perspective of the East, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not, what they're doing, they feel the threat of the West at this point in history. And that is the point there, right? I always try and look at what the enemy is thinking. What is their perspective? In America, we don't do that. We find somebody we don't like. We start sounding off the war horns. Hitler, Hitler, Hitler. I'm done with that, Julian. I'm done. Fool me once, that old saying, but I'm done with being fooled about the Hitler argument because everybody we in the West we seem to go to war with is Hitler now. It's played out, that card, and I'm done with it. So
yeah, I mean, I'm always skeptical when America wants to involve itself in another country's affairs, whether it's with war or economic sanctions. Well, why? Why? Well, what economic gains do we have? Who are the players? What are the corporations?
Yeah, and we're not told who they are. We're never really told. You got to do.
But the funny thing is, or I don't really think it's funny, but we don't talk about Hunter Biden and President Biden and their connections to Ukraine. We went on and 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 on about Trump and his Russia connections.
Sure.
But yet we know that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have business dealings and connections in Ukraine. And we're just writing them blank checks and sending them all this military aid. Yeah. Okay. So we went on for almost 2-3 years, an entire presidency about Russia, Russia, Russia. And we're only going to spend about 5 minutes about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and their Ukraine connections. And now all of a sudden, Russia upped its 14-year war with Ukraine after it said explicitly to NATO and to the United States to stop encroaching on its western border, and now all of a sudden there's a war. There is a reignited war.
Yeah. Well, Julian, maybe we'll save that for another cast. But to wrap this up, Roe v. Wade has gone down. I think it's a historic day. Some Catholics are arguing it's a rope-a-dope. Maybe it is, but I've chosen to celebrate. Your final thoughts, my friend.
I'm the cynical in me and the skeptic. I definitely, what is the ulterior motive behind Roe versus Wade being overturned? I'm still going to celebrate, but at the same time, I'm still going to be cautious. And what are the mysterious players and what are their next move? Because I think one of the reasons why the right or traditional Catholics or whoever always seem to lose is they never seem to, they're not very strategic. And they don't know stratagem, and even though you don't know who the powers that be are, at least you can try and figure out and know what their next move will be.
Right. Well, I think that kind of skepticism shows you how far down the rabbit hole we are. And not just in America, but really all of the West, post-Enlightenment, West, modernity, whatever you want to call it. Because, in many ways, things have gone so bad for so long now that we're all skeptics now, man. And I'm hearing this not just from integralists and those sorts, Julian, but I'm hearing this from classical liberals. I'm talking about the guys, America #1, rah, 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 greatest of all time, shining city in the hill, the last best hope for mankind. That crowd has become skeptical. And I know, as I was in that camp at one time, for those people to become skeptical, there's clearly some signs of discontent, unhappiness, and concern with a great majority of the population. And I think that in itself has led to a lot of the craziness we see in politics in many ways. I think as we become more and more skeptical, especially those that don't conform to the system itself, you're going to see some hairy times ahead, dark times ahead in America. And that's unfortunate because, America, it's our home, it's our land. We should love her, we should honor her, we should protect her. But at the same time, the political elements at the top of the nation, well, there's some problems there. Let's put it that way. My friend Julien, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Frank. I want to thank my friend Julien DeMarco of the May He Rain vlog for joining me tonight. Roe v. Wade has gone down. Thank you, Jesus. All glory is yours, Christ the King. This is Frank signing off for Frank Speaking. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.